Hello. Welcome to the Only Movie Show, not the Everything Podcast. I know it's on the Everything Podcast YouTube channel, but I promise you, this has nothing to do with the Everything Podcast. This is a mini-series called The Only Movie Show, where we talk about movies and only movies. We do Easter eggs, rankings, reviews, all that sort of stuff. And I'm excited for this first episode, hosted by Will. So, without further ado, enjoy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into my first episode of the Only Movies Show, the new little mini-series that we are going to be posting right here on the Everything Podcast YouTube channel. I am Will, the co-host of the Everything Podcast. I'm going to be today, during my first episode, starting this off with a good old-fashioned list. A good old-fashioned list. I am going to be ranking the Rocky and Creed movies. That's right, the franchise that started all the way back in 1976 with Rocky 1. And there's gonna be a Creed 3 this November as well. No Sylvester Stallone, obviously, but I'm still very excited about that. So that's how that's what I'm gonna be doing today. I'm gonna be ranking the Rocky and Creed movies combined. I'm gonna put them together into an 8-part list. But quickly, let me tell you, me, as a 14-year-old, how I was introduced and how I got into the Rocky and Creed movies. So, a few summers ago, my father introduced me to the films. Rocky 1 we actually watched on an old VHS tape, which is kind of cool now that I think back to it. I visited Cam in Massachusetts that summer, as I do pretty much every summer except these last two with COVID. But I remember watching Rocky 4 and Rocky 5 in Massachusetts with Cam as well, so I got to share that experience with him, even though he had already seen them. But of course, how could I not be so inspired by those films? So inspirational. Just one of the best underdog stories ever created, I would say, in the world of movies. What Sylvester Stallone created with the Rocky Balboa character. And there are just messages, I feel like, and things in those films that can just be guiding and inspiring for your own life as well, which is what I think makes those films so awesome. Case in point, take a look at Rocky Balboa when he tells his son, it ain't about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, how much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. You can take little quotes like that from these films and use them in your own life, which I think is so, so awesome. So, without further ado, here I go with this list. The Rocky and Creed films ranked according to me, and I'm going to do this more in terms of my favorites, because let me tell you something. The film that's going to be at number 1 on this list isn't going to be the film that I think is the best Rocky and Creed movie, but it's the one that's my favorite. So that's how I'm going to be doing this here today. But without further ado, number 8 on the list obviously has to be Rocky 5. I personally do not think it's as bad as people say it is. When I watched it the first time, I was like, what are people talking about? Why are they so hard on this movie? But at the end of the day, in a list situation like this, there is no way for it not to be last on the list. You don't see Rocky in an actual ring which would have been awesome, and not a believable bad guy. If you ask me, the training montage from that film, I couldn't even tell you. Just not a great story, and kind of a failed attempt to have Rocky go back to the days where he was struggling more. So, in a different situation, it probably could have worked, but just not there. Rocky V is last on the list. Number 7 on the list, and let me be clear, 7-1, I love them all. This is super painful having to do this. But number 7 is Creed 1. Creed 1 from 2015. Great film. It's the start of the Rocky and Adonis Creed relationship, which is a great relationship, but if I may add, really brilliant idea. Let me give you number 6 on my list, which is Rocky 1. Rocky 1 is number 6 on my list, and let me be very, very clear. I love and enjoy Rocky 1 and Creed 1, but for some reason, the sequels to Rocky 1 and Creed 1, Rocky 2 and Creed 2, for some reason, I just enjoy them so much that they put them over the originals for me. I can't tell you why, but that's just what happened. That's just what happened. Number 5 on the list, Rocky 3. Really gotta give credit to Sylvester Stallone for doing what he did in this movie. You would already, come out with 2 great kind of, struggling Rocky, more underdog story Rocky movies in Rocky 1 and Rocky 2. So credit to him for kind of moving to a different vibe in this Rocky film, and while still containing an emotional story arc with the passing of Mickey. So really, credit to Sylvester Stallone. I thought after Rocky 1 and Rocky 2, that was a really hard task, but he passed it with flying colors. Number 4 on the list, Creed 2. My favorite bad guy, which is also saying my most hated bad guy in the history of the Rocky films, is Ivan Drago. And to see him back in this film with his son, Victor Drago, and to have their return be so masterful, I just think it's an outstanding film. And I have a poster of it in my room as well. It has Rocky and Ivan staring at each other in the back, and then Adonis and Victor staring at each other in the front, and I just love that because it's the rivalry of old taking its toll on the rivalry of new. Number 3, this is going to raise some eyebrows, but for me, it is Rocky Balboa. I believe that if Rocky 5 hadn't already come out and people weren't done with kind of Rocky movies, I think this would be a beloved film. I think it perfectly copes with the loss of Adrian. I find it inspiring, Rocky talking about just having that beast inside him. Inspiring is the word that I use for this movie. I mentioned the Rocky quote from earlier about it ain't about how hard you hit. Folks, go back and watch this movie again. Really, really do. And think about what I said. Number 2 on the list, Rocky 2. I mentioned how I find I just enjoy the sequels for some reason more than the originals. So, Rocky 2, I just think when he's struggling again, and then he has the training montage with the kids, and then the victory after everything that happened to Adrian, it just makes me jump out of my seat basically every single time that I see it. So, one of the great sequels in the history of movies, I would say, for sure. Hard to go back and do it all again after it was so masterfully done in Rocky 1, but Sylvester Stallone, you did it in Rocky 2. And number 1 on my list is Rocky 4. I just think Sylvester Stallone did such a masterful job creating a bad guy for you to absolutely, positively hate. And that is Ivan Drago. I think Dolph Lundgren gives an absolutely masterful performance with the kind of, stone cold still just glare of Ivan Drago that he portrayed in the training montage where he's screaming Drago at the top of the cliff, and the victory in the speech afterward about America and Russia and if I can change and you can change, everybody can change. It's as satisfying a victory as I can think of watching the Rocky films. So let me recap this really quick. Number 8, Rocky 5. Number 7, Creed 1. Number 6, Rocky 1. Number 5, Rocky 3. Number 4, Creed 2. Number 3, Rocky Balboa. Number 2, Rocky 2. And number 1 is Rocky 4. That is how I conclude my first episode of the Only Movies show. I will talk to you again soon. And again, start looking for these weekly as we incorporate them onto the Everything Podcast channel. Sometimes me, sometimes Cam. Really looking forward to continuing to do this. So, thank you for tuning in, everybody.